So on that note, I would like to invite our academic experience panelists to join us. This panel is designed to provide you with more information about academics at STU and will give you a chance to ask questions of professors and current students. We encourage you to submit your questions through the Q&A box. And remember, there are no silly or stupid questions. We are here today because we want to speak with you about things you're wondering about and to learn all about St. Thomas. Open House is a great opportunity for you to have a better understanding of STU. So please ask away. And with that, I'm going to invite our panelists to introduce themselves. And let's start with Dr. Babineau.
Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, everyone, depending on where you are on the globe this morning. Well, what's morning for us? My name is Dr. Babineau, and I am a professor of Spanish here at St. Thomas University. I've been here for 14 years, and it's been a wonderful career that I look forward to talking to you more about this morning.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our open house. My name is Jenica. I'm a fourth-year student. I'm honoring in criminology and criminal justice, and I'm majoring in psychology. I also play on the varsity women's volleyball team at STU.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Pablo. I'm a second-year international student from Spain, studying history and French here at St. Thomas.
Hi, I'm Dr. Julia Torrey. I've been at St. Thomas since 2002, and I teach in the history department. I teach courses on the history of modern Europe, on the globe, and also recently food history. I'm very excited to talk to you all.
Excellent, thank you all. And so as you can see, you have an excellent panel of experts at your disposal here today. So please ask away, send in your questions. And what I'll ask of our panelists today is I'll ask a question of one of you. If someone has additional information to share on top of what is already discussed, please feel free to jump in. And we'll just sit back, relax, and enjoy the next, well, I think it's about 40 minutes or so, so our attendees can ask lots and lots of questions. So the first one I'm going to ask is a question that I see quite often, actually, so this is a good one. I have a question asking, am I going to be prepared for university? What are the differences between high school and university? So maybe Pablo, I'll ask you to kick that one off.
For sure. I would say that the biggest difference is that at university, you have a lot of independence in terms of what you want to explore and study, which is something that I was very interested in because when I was in grade 12, I didn't really know what I want to study, but at STU, I got the opportunity to explore different fields in my first year. But obviously with that independence, you might feel like you don't have enough guidance, or you might feel like you don't really know how to approach each discipline. But at STU, we have a wide array of student services like our student success coach or our writing center that can really help you figure out how to tackle an assignment or how to take good notes and all of the different skills that you might need to succeed academically. So I would say that it is different in terms of what you can study, but there's a support network for students. So it might be a little bit intimidating, but you will do perfectly. You will do perfect, yeah.
Excellent, excellent. I'm going to paraphrase this next question. We've got a couple of questions that have come in around the types of supports that are offered specifically by professors. So of course, a lot of our students who come to St. Thomas are coming directly from high school, and they're used to being in a classroom every single day with a teacher and having that type of interaction. And so I guess these questions are coming in kind of around what's that relationship like between student and professor. Maybe Dr. Babineau, I could ask you to go first.
Sure. I'm happy to speak to this, actually. I think that it's one of the reasons that I enjoy working at St. Thomas and teaching at St. Thomas so much. And that is that at St. Thomas, the classroom sizes are generally very small, statistically much smaller than the vast majority of other universities. And so right off the bat, there is a very different sort of tone and connection that you'll have with your professors because you're in a smaller space. with a maximum of 60 students, and even that class size is quite rare. For example, in our department, in the languages department, class sizes are a maximum of 25 students. And so that is immediately in the first week, you will have direct contact with your professor. And I know that in my case, I make it a goal to know all of my students' names by the end of the first week of classes. So that sets a tenor. And the minute that you connect with your professor and they connect with you and know your name, I see students approach me after class. I arrive early to class to have time to speak informally with students who are sitting waiting for classes to start. And so that sets off the kind of relationship that as the semester progresses, if there are problems that arise, there's a basis there for you to come and talk to me and for me to offer help or advice. And not only on the problem side, but also on the opportunity side, right? So if you're interested in minoring, if you're interested in majoring, or if you're interested in participating in a research project with me or other professors, the relationship is there. And we hire students also in our department in a sort of a peer tutoring capacity. So we just know, we know who those people are. We are able to directly approach students and say, are you interested in this opportunity? Would you like to apply? So it's a really unique experience. And I speak as someone who went to a huge undergraduate university in Ontario. And I certainly did not have that there. There was none of that there. So what you experience at St. Thomas is very unique. And I think that's one of our most valuable contributions to you as undergraduate students.
Great, thank you very much. And actually, you started to reference this, Dr. Babineau, in your answer. I'm looking at a couple of other questions here that are coming in around that choosing of what your major or the concentration of classes might be in second, third, and fourth year. And Dr. Torrey, I'm wondering, just even listen to your introduction and the types of classes you're teaching. Obviously, there's a plethora of options that are available, not only kind of across our academic selection of subject matters or majors, but also just even within a particular department. Maybe you could speak to a little bit about your experience of working with students throughout from first year through their fourth year, of how they have kind of narrowed in on an academic path.
Yeah, in the history department, and I think this is true in most departments, the first year course is just a beginning, and it gives you a flavor for different things. In the history department, we teach world history at the first year level, and that's a big survey course, which allows you to get a sense of the whole of world history, but also then think, well, hey, I'm really interested in the history of East Asia. Maybe I'd like to look more into that if I do a major in history, or even if I keep history as a minor or do some electives in history. And then as your history degree sort of moves on, it becomes a little bit more directed, and you can take courses that would deal with the history of Europe, which is my region of specialty, but we also have people who deal with the history of Latin America, the history of Africa, the history of the United States. And we have an extremely global department, in fact, and people who are able to speak to all of those different subject areas. And you can also specialize by topic. I mentioned earlier that I teach the history of food. And in fact, I think Pablo's in my class, right? So you can specialize in terms of the theme that you want to study a little bit as well. But I was also going to say, with regard to your earlier question, that first year students coming in from high school often feel a little bit overwhelmed. And one of the things that we try to do at the first year level is to develop some skills that you're going to be able to apply then as you move on. So, perhaps as you come in as a history student, you might not know what a primary source is, or you haven't worked deeply with primary sources. Well, we understand that, and we're going to help you to figure out what a primary source is and how you should analyze it. So you're not just dropped into the deep end, and the small classes are helpful for that as well, of course.
Excellent, thank you very much. Switching gears a little bit, Jenica, we've talked a lot about kind of the in-class experience, and we're getting some questions about opportunities outside of the classroom as well. So I'm just wondering, as a student, how you may have taken advantage, or what your experience has been kind of outside of the classroom here at St. Thomas.
Sure. Yes. Thank you, Ryan. So at St. Thomas, there are a ton of clubs and societies that you can get involved in. So probably if there is something that you're interested in, there is already a club and society for it. And if there's not, you can actually create your own. So some of the opportunities that I've had, particularly I'm interested in law, a career in law, maybe in the future. So my experiences particularly, I've had the opportunity to participate in moot court, which is a Supreme Court simulation. So I was actually able to try it out, what it's like to be a lawyer in front of judges. And then also, just sticking with the law theme, I've been a member of the Pre-Law Society of all 4 years at St. Thomas. And this year I've actually been able to be the vice president of the society. So these are just my particular interests. But again, there's mental health society at St. Thomas. There's a Best Buddies program. There's a variety of varsity sports. There's also intramural sports. So anything that you're interested in, chances are Stu probably has a clubs and society for it.
And actually, that last part of your question kind of segues perfectly into another question that we received here. Looking at, I'm not a varsity athlete, but I love to stay active. What are the opportunities at St. Thomas? I'll throw it to you first, Jenica, and if anyone else wants to chime in, please do.
Sure, yeah. So there are lots of intramural sports teams. I know a lot of people who live on residence or off campus, and they actually create teams, and every week they'll have either basketball or volleyball games. So I know people who have actually never played the sport but wanted to get involved and stay fit and have attended these intramural events. There's also yoga events or Zumba events on campus. And then there's also the J.B. O'Keefe Fitness Center at St. Thomas. So actually, when you're a student, you actually get a free gym pass. So that is so nice to take advantage of and stay active as a student.
One of the, we've had a couple of questions now that are addressing time management, and a question, I guess I'm thinking this back again about when I was a student here. It took a little bit of time just to kind of get in a different rhythm or a flow than what I was used to in high school. I'm thinking way back, of course. Maybe Dr. Babineau, if you could speak to kind of the flow of or the rhythm of a student time where they're not in class as much, but time management obviously is very important. Ways that you've seen in your time here that Stu can assist students who might have that concern.
Sure. I think that this also is related to a question that we saw earlier about what are the differences between high school and university life. And I would say that this is really one of the big ones. And I think that the overarching theme here is how there is a transition between high school and university to other people structuring your life for you, to you having to structure and be responsible for your own time and your own life. And as Pablo said very eloquently, that is both a privilege and it is a responsibility. And so for some people, and I think we can all, even those of us who are professors now, and as you said, Ryan, we're not foreign to these challenges. We were students also at one time, and I also had to make that transition from high school to university, and I also found it difficult. At the university level, you're in class a lot less. So a typical student course load, especially in liberal arts, where there don't tend to be labs or any extra hours outside of the core classroom time, you'll be in class approximately 15 hours a week. So you'll have 5 classes, and each one will have about 3 hours of in-class time. So I always tell my students as a guideline that you should expect to spend about 2 hours of work on your coursework outside of class for every hour that you spend inside of class, right? And so I try to counsel students, my first year students, on time management. I check in with them regularly to see, okay, as everyone, how are you making progress with the course material? Remember not to wait until the last minute to start memorizing a vocabulary list. Here are some ideas of ways that you can divide up this work and tackle it in chunks over the next 2 weeks to meet the learning goals. And so that's one way that I help students and give them examples, and I get out pieces of paper and divide them up and show them it's sort of a schedule and say, okay, how about you do this here and this here and this here. So globally at the class level, I do that. Individually with students, I counsel them also. And I think that one of the great strengths of St. Thomas, I think getting to be well known in the student services office, because the minute I see that a student is starting to have difficulties, then I just march them over to the student services office where there are so many resources. And that is a point that I really want to make strongly, that I think that through I've been teaching for 24 years now, and the number one predictor, I think, of student success is the ability of the student to look for help, because we're all going to need some help at some point or another. It may be in a course, it may be with time management, it may be a mental health issue. And I've seen a lot of those over the years as well. But students who get into the habit of asking for help and just saying, or advice, I'm having problems with this, start with your professor is a good starting place. I can help you. And if I can't, if it's beyond the scope of what I can do, or I know there are other resources and I do know that they're there and what they are, then I will physically walk you up to those resources. And I do it all the time. So I think that's sort of the trajectory of what you can expect at STU, and help with time management, which is a huge thing, because it's really a great example of the transition from other people, right? Arranging your schedule and telling you, to you having to do that every semester. And it's not an easy transition for some people, but there is a lot of help, and you can be successful in making that transition with that help.
That's great. And you referenced the mental health support services briefly, and I'll just take a minute, just it's a good example of kind of the teamwork we also have with our neighboring institution, the University of New Brunswick, in the sense we do have full-time mental health counselors, well-being counselors here on the St. Thomas campus, but they work very collaboratively with the counseling center at UNB as well. And that has been a real resource to students. And I know for some students, being away from home for the first time and having a lot of the changes that are happening and like what we're talking about now, the rhythm of the academic world, there can be a lot of pressure that people start to feel. And we have a team here that can be very supportive of that. And like Dr. Babineau has referenced, the professors are often the first to kind of recognize that and able to guide people in the right direction. Pablo, I'm going to ask you a little bit about, we've got a couple questions here about living in residence.
Yeah, for sure. So as an as an international student, I really didn't know the city that well. So I decided to live in residence as kind of like an introduction to living in Fredericton. And I am very glad I did. I got to meet incredible people that are now my best friends. And I really got to experience a community, and I felt like I belonged to a group of people that share the same passions and interests, because again, we are an institution focused on the liberal arts and social justice. So as Christy was talking about in the introduction, I could overhear people talking about history or philosophy or things that I'm super passionate about. So not only did I get to meet people that are super friendly and share the same interests, but also I got to keep on those meaningful discussions outside of the classroom. So living in residence really gave me that opportunity. And I just wanted to briefly go back to what Dr. Babineau was saying about time management. I think that also it's very important that students also realize that flexibility is super important. Like obviously you want to have its structure and like know where your classes and your study time fits into your schedule, but also like give yourself some room to, to if anything happens, because life sometimes changes, and it's also important to like have time to plan accordingly. But yeah.
Thank you very much. Dr. Tory, I'll ask you this question, a specific question about what can students do with their arts degree after St. Thomas? So I'm just thinking back to over the years of you're working with students, what you've seen them go on to do after STU.
Anything they want is the short answer. In terms of the opportunities, the lovely thing about an arts degree is that it can take you all over the world and into many different types of professions. You can do anything from, I'm just thinking of maybe history specifically, but this would also apply to neighboring disciplines. Sometimes historians go on to law school, for example. Sometimes they go on to journalism. They sometimes become teachers. They sometimes enter the service of the government in one form or another, either the foreign service sometimes, or also they work for the local government, the provincial government. Sometimes they move to Ottawa and work for the federal government. Historians specifically would also sometimes begin in museums and move towards archival work, or they would do public history, so educating the public about historical issues. Sometimes they go into business. The beautiful thing about a history degree, or indeed any degree in the liberal arts, is that you can turn the skills that you have to all kinds of things. You're good at problem solving, for example. You're good at doing research. You can assimilate a broad body of information into, you can sort of distill it and write a summary of it for somebody. Maybe that somebody happens to be the Minister of Finance or the Minister of something else. So you know how to take lots of information, to look at it critically, to analyze it, to summarize it. You can write well, typically. The liberal arts are very good at teaching people to write. And that's how you transmit your ideas to other people. So those are skills that are widely transferable. And we've had people go on to all kinds of different careers.
I couldn't help but think when you were just answering that question, how similar that your answer was to a friend of mine who did history at St. Thomas, actually, and went on and has worked in so many different areas. And when I asked him about, the transition from like career areas too, there's not even a common theme necessarily. And he often will reference that kind of flexibility and the core skills that have allowed him to go from, he was in banking, he worked in government, and now runs his own business with and managing staff. And he's like, all the things that you have just referenced are the same things I'm hearing from him in his career path.
And a degree in the liberal arts also teaches you about human beings, about people. And I was going to say, I'm thinking of a friend of mine who became a doctor, in fact, with a liberal arts degree, because she knew how to deal with people. She had to take additional courses, obviously more directed towards her medical learning, but you know how to understand people and to put yourself in the shoes of somebody else. And that's an important life skill too.
If I could,
oh, sorry.
I just wanted to add something, Ryan, to that. As Christy mentioned at the very beginning, Christy is what we call a first generation student. So a student whose parents did not attend university. And I was also a first generation student from rural New Brunswick. And so I was exposed to, I ran up against a lot of myths that my family members had about the use of a liberal arts degree. And when they learned that I decided to major in Spanish, it was generalized panic throughout my family that they were investing in a degree and that this young woman was not ever going to get a job, because I told them I was doing Spanish and Latin American studies as a major, and they thought I was learning Latin. So they were saying, what are you going to do with a Latin degree, And I think that there is still this sort of pervasive myth in some parts of our society, and sometimes that can be perpetuated by our local and provincial leaders, that in order to get a job, you need to be studying something very technical, right? It's something very applicable, applied. And I just want to really make the point that the numbers do not support that. The numbers support the success of students with liberal arts degrees. Not to take anything away from technical type learning and community college learning, which has its place, is very important as well. We all together make society a thriving and successful society. But we do have a body that monitors the career paths of graduates from all of our New Brunswick universities, and it's called the Maritime Higher Education Commission. Maritime Provinces Higher Education Commission. And what the numbers show there is that 92%, more or less, of our graduates from St. Thomas University in the liberal arts 4 years or 5 years after their degree, or maybe even in shorter timeframes, are employed, and they're employed well, and they're employed in fields that are related to what they studied. So I think that cannot be underscored enough, because for some people, and I say first generation because of my own experience, for some people it's not clear how a degree in philosophy or history is going to lead you to a successful career, but it does. It does. And as Dr. Torrey said, you can do anything with these degrees, and it's been shown, the numbers are there, right? This is what our students have been able to do, anything they want, and they're involved in all kinds of fields successfully and happily.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. Again, one of the things you just referenced there about coming from a smaller or rural area that is perfect for this next question that we received. And sometimes I forget, we talk often about how small campus is, how small St. Thomas is, and even relatively speaking, city of Fredericton is, relatively speaking, can be quite small. But if you're from a small rural area, and coming to campus, coming to Fredericton for the first time, it can seem really big. But once you're here, it kind of feels really small after you get accustomed to it. But I'm wondering, Jenica, maybe you could speak to a little bit about your experience of coming here. Like, how did you know where to go and how to get to where you're supposed to be?
Sure, yes, thank you, Ryan. So I'm also from a small town in rural New Brunswick. So there's about 1,000 people in the town that I come from. So Fredericton was quite a bit bigger than what I was expecting or that I was used to. So, but I will say that there is such a feeling of community on campus. So if ever I had a question about where to go, or I was lost in a building or couldn't find a classroom, there was always someone who was right there willing to help. I will echo what people had said, that there are so many just friendly beings on campus all the time. So also, you really have a sense of belonging at St. Thomas. So whether that be meeting people through different classes or different clubs and societies, it really is just a place where you feel that you belong, and there's always someone right there willing to help you, especially there's a lot of resources on campus. So definitely take advantage of those. There's a panel this afternoon that's going to address some of the resources that we have available on campus. So that is something that I would definitely encourage everyone to take advantage of.
I will admit to being a student who experienced what a lot of students do in showing up at the right time in the wrong classroom in my first year for a first year class. So, and I remember how gracious my professor was after I realized I was in the wrong class, and not only respecting me getting up and leaving, but also wanting to know where I was supposed to be specifically, and helping make sure I was going in the right direction as I was leaving, interrupting the first of their class and making my way to where I was supposed to be. On the flip side of that, and maybe Pablo, you could address this. I know many of our international students in particular, but students from across Canada who come from larger cities worry about coming to a smaller city and what it's like to live in Fredericton from that perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I grew up in a very big city. And when I was looking at universities in Atlantic Canada primarily, I had never heard of Fredericton. And I started to do more research and see the different opportunities and what a student's life would look like at STU and in Fredericton. And I realized that Fredericton, because there are different post-secondary institutions located in the city, is a very student-friendly city. So there's a lot of employment opportunities for students both on campus and outside of campus. And employers tend to be very understanding because they know that you're a student. Whereas in my city, they didn't really care, because if you had a job, you had to commit to it. Otherwise, they would find someone else that would take the job, because it's a very big city. But in Fredericton, I feel like employers and professors alike, they really understand that you're a student and that your academics are your priority. And I also discovered that there are a lot of events hosted throughout the year, whether it is the winter or the summer. There's always going to be an event or something going on in Fredericton. And because we are so close to downtown Fredericton, you're always going to have the time to go down and it's like a 10-minute walk and you'll be in the heart of the city where there's concerts, there's plays, there's events, and those are very accessible to students. And even if they are, like, even if you have to pay, they'll have like a discount for students. Or there's also lots of cafes and lots of art galleries also downtown. So if you're really interested in the arts and culture, Fredericton is also a very it's a very vibrant city. I'm a bit biased because I'm a history student, so I also really like that Fredericton has a lot of historical sites that students can go to and do research in. So yeah, coming from a big city, I was I wanted to make sure that Fredericton would have opportunities and events available to students, and I was very happy to find out that Fredericton is a very student-friendly city, and that you will always find something to do, whether that is over the weekend or over the week. I very confidently think that.
Great. You know, September is my favorite time of the year for two reasons: the start of school and harvest. Just for those of you who have not yet experienced harvest, it's the largest music festival east of Montreal, and it's a wonderful time. And it happens to coincide with when students return to campus, return to Fredericton, and the city is just transformed into an amazing experience, musical experience. I have a question here. So St. Thomas often, when we are talking to students about their academic experience at STU, we reference the fact that 99% of our full-time professors have their terminal degree in their field. Dr. Torrey, I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit, what does that actually mean? And how does that actually advantage students when they're choosing St. Thomas?
Yeah, well, what it means is that we are experts in our fields. We have PhDs in the subject that we teach, or, you know, there are some disciplines where a PhD is not the final degree. I'm thinking of social work, for example, where it's not always the final degree, but we have specialized education, specialized experience in our fields. And that means that you're learning from people who are also researchers. So you know, there are universities where there are teaching specific positions. That's not the case at St. Thomas. The full-time faculty are all researchers as well, and many of the part-time faculty have a strong research program in addition to their teaching. So we are doing cutting edge research in our fields, and we're bringing that to the classroom. I said earlier that I teach food history. That came about sort of by accident because I got interested in researching the history of food. And then I thought, well, you know, since I'm interested in food, I've always been interested in food. Who isn't? Why can't I take this research subject and turn it into a course? And then what's been really fascinating from my perspective is that the course has influenced my research. I started out with a very narrow topic having to do with the Second World War and Germany, which is my specialized field. And then now I have a project which is really a global project about how freezing developed and the results of the development of freezing for people's ambitions, or states' ambitions, I should say more correctly, across the world. And so my teaching has fed into my research, and my research has fed into my teaching. Another advantage of that for students is that because we have active research programs, we often have funding to hire a student assistant who then becomes a researcher too, and learns about reading the types of books, the types of articles that a researcher reads, and doing the kind of studies that they do. And I think that one of your earlier panelists was talking about her experiences as a student being part of a research project. And that's invaluable, because then if you do decide to go on to a master's or even a PhD or whatever other degree you might decide to go on to do, you have experience working closely with a professor on something that's cutting edge, and you know how to do that. So there are lots of ways in which it's advantageous to have faculty members who are very highly skilled in what they do. Yeah.
So building on that answer, maybe I'd like to get both a student and a professor's perspective on this question. So students asking about double major versus honors, and then kind of as a follow-up to that, asking about the time Like, how is it doable to do double major? Is it doable to do an honors and a major? Just kind of around those. I mean, there's so many different options. So maybe Dr. Babineau, I could start with you and then go to either Jenica or Pablo after. Just talking about, first of all, like, what does that mean, double major versus honors or honors major, if you're comfortable with that? And then just kind of in your experience of working with students who have done that and how they have been able to achieve that academically while still, having a life.
Sure. So the difference between a minor, a major, and an honors, which are sort of the three levels of study, to just put it in very simple terms, it just means the number of courses that you've taken. I mean, I think that we can break it down in those terms. With a bit of a difference with the honors. At the honors level is the most courses that you'll take, right? The majors is a couple courses less, and then the minor is usually substantially less. The honors component opens up an extra door. I'm speaking in general terms here. That has usually has a thesis option. So that is very valuable if you're considering further studies. Or if you're very passionate and you like research and that's what you want to do, then the honors is the route you would take. And those extra credits above and beyond the major that the honors requires, part of those extra credits are generally dedicated to completing a thesis. So doing some research and doing an extensive writing project on a specialized area. Now, I can tell you that yes, many students do double majors. And many students do a major and an honors as well. And I've even seen a couple of students do double honors. What it requires, I think, is that you have an idea early on and you get on those tracks by the end of your first year. I think it becomes increasingly difficult as you move along to get in all the courses that you need to take. Although everything is possible. And over the years, I have also seen students come back after they're done their 4-year term and they do an extra semester, or they're in the workforce and they come back to do a couple of extra courses to complete that major or complete that honors, because that's what they decide they want to do. So everything is possible. I don't mean to make you feel like you have to know in first year, because in fact, that's highly unusual that students come in nowadays and know what they want to major, and that's not the norm. And I hope that I do want to make that clear to people as well. It's not expected that you know in first year. I did not know. I started in one stream and then switched. Statistically, I think 75% of students do not know in first year what they want to major, and that's okay. First year is really the time to explore and take different courses and see what you like and what you're drawn to. So if you are interested in doing a major, double major, yes, that's absolutely possible. And that's the time. First year is a great time to ask a lot of questions. So if you have an idea of the areas that you would like to perhaps do a major, then right away, go talk to one of your professors and get an idea. How many courses do I need to take? What are the requirements? The sooner you have that information, the more empowered you are to smoothly get through all the requirements and complete them on time. So it's important in first year as you're exploring, ask, get information, right? Through your professors and through the academic advisors. And they can tell you, these are the courses, these are the specific courses, because every program has requirements. These are the years that they're offered. This is a second year course, these are third year courses. And then we can help you map out a plan to complete a double major if that's what you want to do.
Great, thank you. And Jenica, maybe just from a student perspective, if you have any comments.
Yes, absolutely. So just to echo what Dr. Babineau said, everything truly is possible. So when I started at St. Thomas, I had an idea to maybe double major, and now I'm actually honoring, and I decided this quite late during my university career. But just like she said, my professors were so helpful to make sure that I was getting on track. With the honors program, I do have the opportunity to do research at an undergraduate level with a supervisor, which is extremely beneficial if you are considering maybe going on and furthering your education, or even just to have these research skills going forward in the workplace. So if that is something that you're interested in, I would definitely encourage you to consider it.
And I can personally attest to what Dr. Babineau was saying. When I started here at STU last year, I was a political science major. And then I started to take courses in French and history and other disciplines. And I realized that while I love political science, it's not what I would like to do in the future. And I discovered my love and passion for history, and that is the road that I want to take. Having the opportunity to also develop my research and writing skills at an undergraduate level is a very beneficial. It's very beneficial, and it's an opportunity that I'm very happy to have. Definitely.
Dr. Torrey, I had a really specific follow-up question to one of your answers earlier when you referenced some of the classes you teach, and a student's asking they have interest in taking courses focused on world wars.
Well, that's me. Yeah, it's interesting because I've in some ways moved a little bit away from teaching courses specifically on the two world wars, in part because my own research interests have moved a little bit away from that, but also because I found that it was more important to understand those wars in their broader context than to focus in too narrowly on the wars themselves. I sometimes teach a fourth-year seminar on World War I and World War II. And that's a seminar that started out as a European course back in 2002, and over time has become a global course. And I find wars interesting as moments of crisis that reveal all kinds of things about the societies in which they're taking place. And so I'm much more interested personally in the broader impacts of wars and less the sort of military, tactical, and strategic questions. And I would say, though, one of the nice things about being at STU is that one can take the occasional course down the hill at UNB. And my colleagues at UNB are very interested in the more military side of war, war as a historical question. And so sometimes if a student is really keen on strategy and those kinds of sort of more specifically military questions, I'll say, well, go take a course at the Gregg Center down the hill at UNB, and then come to me for a broader course that's going to tell you why that war is important for the history of the 20th century globally, or in fact, what's happening today. How can we understand what's happening today by looking back at the events of World War II? So I rarely teach courses that are specifically on the two world wars, but every course I teach has something that involves them, in fact, because that is where my own research started out and my own teaching in some ways. So for example, I'm teaching a course on the history of Europe since 1945 right now. You can't teach the history of Europe since 1945 without talking about the impact of the Second World War on Europeans' whole way of thinking in the post-war period. And we've just done a little unit on the legacy of the war, whether that's a legacy we looked at the many ways that legacy influenced, for example, politics in post-war Europe. There are many members of the resistance against the Nazis who became important politicians after the war. To Tito in Yugoslavia, Charles de Gaulle is one in France that people have often heard of. How did their experience in the war impact the way that they wanted to shape Europe after the war? And then what influence does that have on today's Europe? So the wars are never far away, dare I say, but it's something that I used to teach perhaps more and teach a little bit less now. But I also teach a course on the history of Germany, which again, you can't teach the history of Germany without spending quite a lot of time talking about World War I and World War II.
Maybe because it's mid to late morning here, but I am more inclined to want to talk more about your food, history of food work right now as well.
But that one too, the wars are not far away, because we talk about rationing, we're coming to the wars actually right around now, so yeah.
And that's one of the things I love about working at a university as well, just even some of the conversations that you can have around campus and with people who have extensive knowledge in a particular area, and then how it relates to work that's being done amongst other faculty and and you referenced the UMB campus again, like we referenced earlier, our neighbors at University of New Brunswick. One of the advantages of having two universities that are neighbors, literally sharing a campus, is just that many more experts and that many more opportunities for not only our students, but for our faculty as well. We're closing in on time here for this panel. I do have a question though. I'm going to ask Jenica. We hadn't actually talked about scholarships and bursaries that are available, and wondering if you might be able to speak to that, and then I'll come back with a wrap-up question for each of you.
Sure, yes. So at St. Thomas, there are a lot of scholarships and bursaries available for domestic students, so students within New Brunswick or in Canada, and then also for international students. So I would just encourage, if anyone is thinking about applying to St. Thomas, like be sure to apply to scholarships because there is funding available, and that is so it's an amazing opportunity to have funding while you are going to school because it takes one thing off of your plate, off of your mind to consider when you're studying. So definitely, if you are considering applying to STU, if you're accepted to STU, apply to scholarships is my biggest recommendation for you.
And that is a nice little plug just to remind people that the academic or the admissions office team is standing by. So if anyone does want to apply today, they can, and we'll have an answer back to you very quickly. So as I said, we're getting close to our wrap up time for this panel. Before we do though, I'm going to pose one last question for each of you, kind of closing comments, but I'll start by asking, what is your favorite thing about being a STU student or professor? Let's go to Pablo first.
For me, it would be the opportunities, especially inside of the classroom. So as Dr. Terry was mentioning, we really we talk a lot about the wars in history, and I'm actually very interested in that. So I'm now doing a research project on food during the war, during World War II more specifically. So having that opportunity to develop my research and my writing skills is something that I truly appreciate. And also outside of the classroom, because you have the opportunity to meet people that have similar interests, meet friends, explore Fredericton and different things that are happening, events, workshops, museums, you name it. Those are the type of opportunities that will make your post-secondary journey incredible and a long-lasting, perfect memory.
We'll stay with, we'll go with, as people just are appearing on my screen, Dr. Torre.
Sure. I think it's two things actually that I think are most wonderful about STU. One of them is the small class sizes. I think that's invaluable. And I have colleagues across the globe who are envious of the fact that I can have a class with 12 people in it, or a class with just 20 people in it that's actually a second or third year class. Oftentimes they don't get those small groups until fourth year. So that's wonderful because I can give individual attention to people and we can really talk to each other about the material, about the things that I'm trying to transmit, and I can learn from the students too. So that's the first thing. And the second one is flexibility, to teach the things that I love to teach and that I'm passionate about. There's nobody, it's not a big university where a framework says you must teach this, this, and this every year. I can teach courses that I'm really passionate about. If I say I'm interested in something new, my colleagues are not going to say, no, you have to teach this other required course. No, you go ahead, teach what you're passionate about. We'll fit it into a framework so that it makes sense for students' programs, and students will learn more because you're passionate about what you teach.
And Jenica?
Yes, for me, it would be the tight-knit community at St. Thomas. So just like Dr. Torrey had said, our courses are capped at 60. And as you go up in your years, your classes actually get smaller and you get to have those meaningful discussions with professors and classmates about the material that you're reading. And so just that tight-knit community, not only that close working relationship between professors and students, but also just the warm feeling on campus in general. It is such a friendly place to be. And so that would definitely be my favorite part, is just how close-knit our community is.
Dr. Babineau, closing words on this panel for you.
Well, I'm gonna sound repetitive because I think that Pablo, Jenica, and Dr. Torrey have said it very well, and I echo their thoughts. But maybe I could give you a concrete example of how important the relationships are that we have with our students and the small class sizes are. As everyone knows, this year we are in unprecedented circumstances in terms of our teaching at STU, and we've had to adapt. Speaking of adaptability, we've had to adapt quickly and quite drastically to teaching in an online format, which none of us had, or almost none of us had ever done before. And in my case, it's happening in some, I teach literature classes as well, but it's happening in my literature classes, but also I have 2 language classes, grammar classes, oral communication classes. I mean, just imagine as September was looming and I'm thinking, what am I going to do to teach language to students online, virtually? What am I going to do? And as I explored technology and different platforms that were available to me, I think I can say that thanks to A, the small class size, and B, the fact that I know my students and have a good relationship with them, and I'm able to connect with them as a result of those small class sizes, I've been able to do some things to help students learn that I would never, ever have been able to do if I had 80 students in the class. For example, I started a chat group with my class. Just to chat. It doesn't count for points or anything, but I just got us all signed up. So I'm able to imagine me, a professor, writing to students in September and saying, send me your phone number and I'm going to get you connected. If all voluntary, right? But if you'd like extra practice, because we're not meeting 3 times a week face-to-face, I'm thinking, how can I give these students opportunities who really want to learn the language? So I said, send me your phone number, right? And I just laughed because I think this would never have happened at this university in Ontario. This unheard of. So I got them all set up in a chat on the phone, and so we're chatting and we're sending pictures. Oh, so and so's got a new cat, and they post a picture of their new cat, all in Spanish, right? This is my new cat. This is the cat's name. This is the cat's personality. This is how old the cat. All these communicative functions that we're learning in Spanish that they're applying in chat, right? In Spanish, on their in this chat group. That is a direct result of everything that Dr. Tori and Jenica and Pablo have said about small class sizes, the sense of community, the connection that we have with our students. So I'm able to post, I sent a Halloween picture of myself in costume with the kids and okay, please describe, what's happening here. Who are these people? What are their names? What are the colors of the costumes? What's the name of the holiday? Is this holiday celebrated in Latin America? Yes or no? What's celebrated there? All of these opportunities that would never otherwise have happened. So I guess that's how I would build upon what's already been said. And it is what makes me very grateful to be working here at STU. And it's made my career just extremely rewarding, the connections with students and the way that leads to, I think, improved teaching and improved learning outcomes for the students.
I couldn't think of a better way to wrap up this panel for each of you. Thank you very, very much.